Well, I thought it was the start of his silent treatment until we reached home.
Tell me, is there something you're actually good at? You had an infection twice, had a miscarriage, and now you can't even hold a normal child? Is that not insane? What can you actually do?
I felt my heart crack in my chest. There was nothing I could say to defend myself. I felt defeated. No, I was defeated. Eventually, Tommy left the house. We had an altercation a week later, and he said it to my face that he wasn't going to raise a disabled child with me.
You haven't birthed it yet, and I feel so irritated already. God, I can't believe this.
I watched in tears as my husband grudgingly walked out of the house with some of his things. If I had the opportunity to be gifted with a superpower, I would have asked to be able to see into the future. Maybe if I could, I wouldn't have fallen into Tommy's trap. Hi, my name's Sally. Allow me to take you through my journey with an insensitive and thoughtless husband. I met Tommy during my college years. It was one of those typical college parties where the music was too loud and the drinks flowed freely. Tommy stood out from the crowd with his charming smile that caught my attention. He approached me with a cheesy pickup line, and surprisingly, I found myself laughing and engaging in conversation with him. We hit it off instantly. Tommy was smart, ambitious, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. We spent hours talking that night, sharing our dreams and aspirations. From that moment on, we were inseparable. The years we spent together before marriage were filled with love and laughter. We explored new places, tried new cuisines, and supported each other through life's ups and downs. Tommy was my rock, my best friend, and I couldn't imagine my life without him. As our relationship blossomed, so did our dreams of a future together. We talked about marriage, children, and building a life filled with love and happiness. Tommy was always attentive and affectionate, showering me with love and compliments. I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. After 4 years of friendship and dating, Tommy proposed to me. Of course, I agreed. I was in love with him and saw a future with him. Our first year of marriage was even more blissful. Our love grew, and we were slowly achieving our goals. After a year and 6 months of being married, we decided that we were ready to start having kids. Unfortunately, the universe wasn't ready to support us through all our plans. Firstly, after trying for 6 months without any luck, we visited our family hospital for a checkup. There, we discovered that we both had fertility issues that were stopping us from being able to have kids. It brought both relief and sadness to us. Relief because we knew what the hindrance was, and pain because we had to spend another 6 months getting treated. Since we both desired greatly to have kids, we were religious with our treatment and never missed anything. Luckily, once it was all done, we were good to go ahead with having kids. By then, 2 years had passed since we got married. Of course, people had begun talking. My in-laws had called us on one occasion to talk about it. Then, we were still in the middle of being treated.
Are you both not planning to have kids? It's been too long, don't you think?
We're taking our time, Mom. We'll have children once we're ready.
I mean, there was no way we could tell anyone about our issues. Once our treatment was completed, we were confident about having a child soon. 3 months later, I got pregnant. We were overjoyed. Tommy seemed even more excited than I was. He was so happy that he'd nearly cried. We immediately announced the news to family and friends who were equally as excited as us. When my mother-in-law and sister-in-law paid us a visit with gifts, I was moved to tears. I felt so loved and happy. Unfortunately, tragedy struck when I had a miscarriage when my pregnancy was only 2 months gone. I'd cried my eyes out, wishing for death after the doctor told me I lost the child. I spent a week at the hospital before I was discharged. My emotions were all around the place. At first, Tommy was understanding and supportive, but he soon began making certain insensitive comments that only made me feel even worse. Once we were together in the living room, and I needed to go pee. It had only been a week and 3 days after I had a miscarriage, so I still needed help around. I'd asked him to help me up, but he'd refused.
You only had a miscarriage, not childbirth itself. At this point, I think you're just pretending so you can receive pity.
I was rendered speechless. I couldn't believe he'd said such a thing to me. My emotions took over and I broke into tears. He left me in the living room. I struggled out of the couch and helped myself to the restroom. I didn't speak to him for a whole week. While we were still not on speaking terms, he was on a call with someone in the living room when he made an insensitive comment again.
Females are just full of unnecessary emotions. They make everything about them like bad things don't happen to other people too.
I ignored him, my thumbs and eyes busy on my phone. He continued throwing even more comments until I was forced to go back into our bedroom. That night, I cried myself to sleep. We spent another week not talking to each other, until one night. I'd just finished my night prayers and was about to get in bed when Tommy suddenly came in front of me and went on his knees. As he apologized in tears, I felt my heart clench. I forgave him because I felt that the miscarriage had affected him too, and he didn't know how to purge his emotions. It was a dumb conclusion, but I believed it then. Luckily for us, 5 months later, I got pregnant again. When I got the news from the doctor after the test, I felt scared. I didn't want to go through another miscarriage and have to deal with those emotions again. It took me a week before I was finally able to muster courage to tell Tommy. His reaction was a relief. Although he was scared too, he didn't let it cover his happiness. I felt encouraged seeing how he reacted to the news. I was determined to do everything to make the baby stay with us. I followed all of the doctor's instructions and ensured I never stressed myself over anything. Tommy was of great help too. He assisted with the major parts of the chores and never complained. All we wished for was to golf our child in our hands. In the middle of the 5th month, we went to the hospital for a scan. There we got shocking news. Our son was suspected to have Down syndrome. Tommy didn't say anything as a response to the doctor. Even while we drove home, he refused to say anything to me. Well, I thought it was the start of his silent treatment until we reached home.
Tell me, is there something you're actually good at? You had an infection twice, had a miscarriage, and now you can't even hold a normal child? Is that not insane? What can you actually do?
I felt my heart crack in my chest. There was nothing I could say to defend myself. I felt defeated. No, I was defeated. Eventually, Tommy left the house. We had an altercation a week later, and he said it to my face that he wasn't going to raise a disabled child with me.
You haven't birthed it yet, and I feel so irritated already. God, I can't believe this.
I watched in tears as my husband grudgingly walked out of the house with some of his things. I didn't let it weigh me down for too long. I quickly helped myself out of my sadness and moved on with my life. I was determined to take care of my child in the best way possible. 3 months after he left, I came across Tommy at the mall while I was out shopping. He was out with a beautiful lady. I'd wanted to ignore him, but he approached me, the lady walking beside him. He introduced her to me with a sly smile.
This is Vivian, my cherished girlfriend. And guess what? She's carrying my child. And it's not like the retarded one you have in you. Our child is healthy and normal.
I felt sad by how quickly he moved on, and him calling my child a retard made me want to tear his skin off his body. I turned and walked away, ignoring his loud, mocking laughter. The months passed quickly, and it was soon time for me to have my child. I was all alone, but I wasn't scared. When my son was born, I was purely shocked. He had no Down syndrome. He was a very normal child. I cried so much when I held him in my hands. On the day I was discharged, while I was waiting for my ride at the reception area, I suddenly sighted Tommy's mother. Before I could call her, the woman saw me. She was so happy to see me and even apologized on Tommy's behalf and promised to bring him back to me. I'd simply laughed it off. I definitely didn't want him back. I was taking care of myself and my son, working hard and shutting out all negativity in my life when Tommy suddenly showed up when my son was 2 months old. His mother had told him about my son being normal. I was even more shocked when Tommy told me his new girlfriend's child had ended up being born without feet and also had Down syndrome. Well, I guess karma taught you a great lesson. I'm sorry, but I can't let you play a father's role in my son's life. Get out of my house. He tried to beg, but I refused to listen. Then he flared up, threatening to report me to the cops for not letting him father his child. I dated him to do that. Find something better to threaten me with, asshole. Show your shameless self out. I knew he would try something funny, so I filed for custody of our child. Luckily, based on the fact that he'd abandoned the child and went ahead to impregnate another woman because he thought our child had a Down syndrome, I was able to have custody of my child until he was 18 and ready to decide whether he wanted to remain with me or not. I was overjoyed. However, it wasn't the same for Tommy. 2 days after the court session, he broke into my house and tried to steal my son by threatening me with a knife. My screams woke up my younger brother, who was visiting at the time. When he saw an unknown man threatening his sister, he was livid. What my ex-husband didn't know was that my brother was a war veteran. He was in the Marines. Before my ex could blink an eye, my brother had beaten him to a pulp. I called the cops, who arrived and took Tommy into custody. While he was in their custody, I got a restraining order against him and also filed for an annulment of our marriage. Luckily, his attack was a sign that he wasn't doing well mentally, and there was also evidence of cheating. The mistress having a child gave me leverage, and I was able to get our marriage annulled. Unfortunately for my ex-husband, the mistress child was born with a condition that affected his spine, and he won't be able to ever walk normally, so he will be stuck in a wheelchair. Exactly what my ex won't want. Once all was done, I took my son and left the country with him to start a fresh life. My ex was sentenced to 6 years behind bars. If my son ever asked about his father, which I heavily doubt, I'm just going to tell him Tommy is dead. Not bad, is it?